Welcome back to the radio podcast on the Roaring Twenties. We have 4 stories and 4 topics today, starting with the Harlem Renaissance, then going to Radio KDKA, then on to Model T, and then finally the Teapot Dome scandal. Our first topic, yet again, is the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance was a very intellectual and social artistic explosion centered in Harlem and Manhattan, and it was in the 1920s in New York City. Often people mention it as the turning point for African American music and literature, culture, and the outspread and widespread public outlook on it. It shaped the way that a lot of people looked at it by inspiring African Americans to root their own culture with styles of white American culture. It was a new beginning for them, with especially artists and writers. One of the main focuses of the Harlem Renaissance was the rise of African American music. One of the most influential musicians of the Roaring Twenties was Louis Armstrong, and here's a sample of his song, Fireworks, from the year 1928. Another influential form of media during the 1920s was the rise of African American literature. One of the most influential poets of that time was Langston Hughes. He wrote many poems, and one of his famous poems being the Ballad of Booker T. Here's this poem. Sometimes he had compromise in his talk, for a man must crawl before he can walk, and in Alabama in '85, a joker was lucky to be alive. That was the Harlem Renaissance. My name is Blake Hall, and now for our next section, we'll be going to Radio KDKA, hosted by Dante Ferrari.
Hello, my name is Dante Ferrari, and today we will be talking about the history of the KDA radio station. In 1920, Westinghouse was one of the leading radio manufacturers. He asked Dr. Frank Conrad, who at the time was a Pittsburgh area ham operator who just played records over airwaves for his friends. Him and Westinghouse set up a regularly transmitting station in Pittsburgh, and on November 2nd, 1920, KDA was the world's first commercial radio station and the beginning of radio popularity. The KDKA broadcasted the Harding-Cox presidential election results, which enabled people to hear the results of the election first before reading it in the paper. The broadcast did not have commercials or any paid advertisements. They financed the broadcast as a way of promoting its own products. But later in August of 1922, their first radio ad aired for real estate developer, which turned into a big business. KDA was a huge hit and inspired many other companies to take up broadcasting. In 4 years, there were 600 commercial stations around the country. This changed communication forever. Songs were heard all around the world, and news traveled faster.
Interrupting your podcast with the advertisement from Ford. Come down and have a whoopee and purchase your own Model T today. This Ducky Bucket is a reliable and affordable option, and it's applesauce and good for the whole family. Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
On to more about how the Roaring Twenties, and I will be teaching you about how the Chipotle Model T changed the future of the world in life, culture, and transportation. And that was the original motor from the Ford that was built in the 1920s. Okay, Henry Ford invented the first car that would drastically change American lives. It was named the car of the century by critics. The Model T improved people's lives because it united families, improved working conditions, improved social lives between couples, and it was used in many different ways. The Model T was the first affordable and tangible car to the average person. The Model T became so popular that at one point, the majority of Americans owned one. directly helping rural Americans become more connected with the rest of the country and leading to the numbered highway system. The Ford Model T was a self-starting vehicle with a left-sided steering wheel featuring an enclosed four-cylinder engine and a detachable cylinder head and a one-piece cylinder block. These are mostly some of the same features we use in our modern-day cars. The Model T brought mobility and prosperity on a whole new level through manufacturing efficiencies at a price that anyone could afford. The moving assembly line created the mass production process, which influenced the machine age. It also enabled Ford to steadily decrease the price of the Model T. After selling over 10,000 Model Ts, Ford announced that the company would cease to sell the Model R or Model S cars, famously remarking that any customer can have a car painted any color that he wants so long as it's black. The possibilities for transportation and where people were able to travel were endless. Over the past 100 years, the base from the Model T has evolved into many different car manufacturing companies all around the world. Now pretty much everyone has a car and no one knows what the future of automobiles will hold.
That was Cole Johnson talking about the Model T. And now onto the Teapot Dome scandal, we have Nick Solorzano.
Hello, I'm Nick Solorzano, broadcasting live from Elk Hills, California, where the government has been bribing the secretaries of these sites to let them drill into the site whenever they want, therefore allowing the Navy to have an emergency supply of oil. The other two sites are located in Wyoming and Buena Vista Hills, California. These sites combined are estimated to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. These sites have to construct an oil storage facility at the naval base in Pearl Harbor, fulfill any minor necessities that the government has, and to build a pipeline that traveled from Wyoming to Kansas City. Senator Albert Fall reportedly was a big factor in the scandal, making a couple deals on his own. He was able to drill on his own with no competitive bidding because of these deals. But before he had this deal, he competed with an oilman and President Harding supporter by the name of Colonel James G. Darden. So President Harding dispatched the Marines in an effort to halt Darden's attempt at drilling at the site. The Denver Post caught wind of this and published a story on it, ruining the whole scandal. So Harry Sinclair tried to stop it. The Denver Post blackmailed Harry Sinclair, and Harry Sinclair was pressured by President Harding to pay off the Denver Post. So he ended up paying the Denver Post $1 million to keep quiet about the deals. In 1927, the Supreme Court ended all activity from these oil sites, ending the scandal, and all the sites were sold legally.